Howdy, everybody. Dr. Andy Woods here, pastor teacher here at Sugarland Bible Church. Welcome to Pastor's Point of View number 378. This is being released on October the 17th, 2025. We have a prophecy update for you today. And as you take a look at our previous slide, here are the two major things that we're going to look at. Number one, mark of the beast technology. Boy, it's in full swing. And number two, we'll take a look at Babylon, some new developments about the literal city of Babylon we want to bring you up to speed on and explain to you why we believe these developments are prophetically significant. So with all of that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our first major category, mark of the beast technology. And of course, as our jumping onto point, biblical entry point, I should say, we like to use Revelation 13, 16 through 18, the famous or infamous mark of the beast passage. It says, he causes all, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, the free and the slave, to be given a mark on their right hand or forehead, and he provides that no one will be able to buy or to sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for that is that of man, and his number is 666. You know, it's so interesting to watch people try to make this less than what it says, try to spiritualize it, but we don't have to do that because we now are living in a technological world where this kind of prophecy, one world surveillance, not being able to participate in the economy unless you receive something on your right hand or your forehead, it makes this whole scenario very, very credible. And there are a lot of things happening in our world technologically that lead us to the conclusion that we never needed to allegorize or symbolize away this prophecy. It means what it says and says what it means because technology has finally caught up to the time period or the basic predictions of the Bible. So let me just kind of start here by showing you this quick video. This is Larry Ellison, who's one of the leaders in the AI technological revolution, speaking to Tony Blair. And it was at a recent conference, and it's so interesting, the title of this conference, you can see it in the marquees that will be hanging nearby. It's called the World Governments Conference. And so it's almost like they're not even trying to hide anymore their ambitions to use technology to subvert, the entire world. And we know that the Antichrist will kind of show up and just, as the late Tim LaHaye used to say, turn the ignition switch or key on a car that's already been built. And so the whole technological infrastructure for the last days New World Order is being constructed as we speak, showing us how literal Revelation 13, 16 through 18 is. So with that being said, let's go ahead and watch this quick video.
You liked. Your body cams will be transmitting that. The police will be on their best behavior because we're constantly watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on.
When you come to government and what government's doing, there are artificial intelligence tools, and some of them I know that Oracle have developed around financial management for government. But also, tell us a bit about because you're right at the forefront of this revolution, what it means for what government should do in terms of its digital infrastructure, digital ID, data centers, and so on.
How do you take advantage of these incredible AI models? And the first thing a country needs to do is to unify all of their data so it can be consumed and used by the AI model. You have to take all of your healthcare data, your diagnostic data, your electronic health records, your genomic data. And in the Middle East, in the UAE, for example, they're incredibly rich in data. They have a lot of population data. The NHS in the UK has an incredible amount of population data, but it's fragmented. It's not easily accessible by these AI models. We have to take all of this data we have in our country and move it into a single, if you will, unified data platform. So we provide context. When we want to ask a question, we've provided that AI model with all the data they need to understand our country. So that's the big step. That's kind of the missing link. We need to unify all of the national data, put it into a database where it's easily consumable by the AI model, and then ask whatever question you like.
So pretty interesting stuff. It's kind of interesting in that clip how frequently Larry Ellison, one of the progenitors of AI, speaking to Tony Blair, the quintessential globalist at of all names, World Governments conference or whatever they're calling this. It's interesting how frequently Larry Ellison kept saying centralization. I mean, that's like the number one goal. We've got to centralize everything, centralize everyone's data and information across national lines, transnationally, supranationally. And that's the best way to keep control, keep tabs of, and keep control of the population. When we got to have everyone's records, health records, employment records, academic records, you name it, in one central place. And that's what's going to allow AI, artificial intelligence, and this technology that they're talking about, keep control of everything and everybody. Once again, I'm not saying this is the mark of the beast technology, but it's certainly pushing us in the direction of the mark of the beast system. The mark of the beast system is not something that won't be up and running until the second half of the tribulation period, if I'm understanding my Bible correctly. However, just a simple question, does the type of thing that you just saw, does it push us further away from the mark of the beast system or closer towards it? I think the answer is obvious. It's the latter. And as technology continues to evolve and develop, you now have the type of climate in place for a future Antichrist to exercise universal surveillance, universal jurisdiction over every single man, woman, and child on planet Earth. And so I would maintain that technology is a key stage-setting event for what the Bible anticipates as the last days scenario. Let's go ahead and go to this article here from the AP. This says the UK, United Kingdom, says it will introduce digital ID cards, reviving a contentious idea. This particular article is dated September 26, 2025. Let me read just a little bit first from this article. It says British citizens and permanent residents will have to. Remember what Revelation 13, 16 through 18 says. It says you can't buy or sell unless you receive a mark. That sounds mandatory to me. Look at how mandatory this British system is. British citizens and permanent residents will have to produce a mandatory digital identification card in order to get work. Prime Minister Starmer announced Friday, reviving a contentious idea in an effort to show that the government has control of the country's borders. The government says the plan will help reduce unauthorized immigration by making it harder for people to work in the underground economy. It says it will also make it simpler for people to access healthcare, welfare, child care, and other public services. Quoting the Prime Minister of the UK, an individual last name Starmer, he says, quote, "You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that," close quote. Starmer told an international meeting of center-left politicians in London. He says the new ID system would be in place before the next election cycle due by 2029. That's right around the corner. Former Prime Minister Tony Blair tried to introduce biometric ID cards 2 decades ago as a way of fighting terrorism and fraud, but the plan was abandoned after strong opposition from the public and Parliament. Announcing the plans, listen to this, at the Global Progress Action Summit. Here's another conference where these things are being discussed, unleashed publicly for the first time, and it's always at these conferences promoting globalism or one worldism. The article concludes this way. Starmer said, adding, quote, "The simple fact that every nation needs to have control over its borders. We do need to know who's in our country," close quote. So you notice how all these things are being sold to us. They're being sold to us as convenience. I mean, Tony Blair, the quintessential globalist, tried to sell this stuff in the UK a couple of decades ago in terms of fighting terror and fighting fraud. I mean, who can be against fighting those things? And it's kind of interesting that Starmer is saying we need these things to police our borders. Now, this is a way to get the right in on this because that's an issue that the right typically cares about, border enforcement. And who could be against border enforcement? Certainly a conservative is in favor of border enforcement. And so now the left, as well as the right, are pulled into this, this mandatory digital system in order to work in the United Kingdom. We have a brief video where this is being discussed at this particular conference. And so we'll go ahead and roll that at this time.
Digital ID. It's as simple as that. And that is why today I am announcing this government will make a new free of charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not.
So it's interesting how he keeps saying it's required, it's mandatory, no opt-out options. That's very similar to Revelation 13, verses 16 through 18, where you will be cut out of the economy if you don't receive this insignia, this mark of the beast on your right hand or your forehead. You can't participate in the economy. And you see how that spirit, that mindset is alive and well with Starmer's and Blair's proposals. You won't be able to work. You won't be able to hold down a job. And he makes this point in it that all people of goodwill, all people of basic sensibility would agree with this. And so this is how these kinds of ideas are becoming normalized in our society and in our culture, in our world. And I guess what I'm saying is the prophetic scenario looks more and more credible as each day passes. It's not just people in the UK that have to sign on to the system to work. Now we're getting word of people entering the UK, people entering Europe have to have something done digitally or electronically to enter the borders. And we have this particular article from livenowfox.com. This is dated October the 7th, 2025. That's a little different date than what's on the screen, but even what's on the screen is September 25th, 2025. But anyway, the main point is this: Americans traveling to Europe will have fingerprints scanned under a new rule. So those paper passports, cardboard passport looking things, plastic passports, that doesn't work anymore. We got to have you electronically in the system. A little bit from this article, it says American tourists traveling to Europe will have their fingerprints scanned and their picture taken when entering most countries under the new guidelines being rolled out next month. So what we were talking about earlier was going to be rolled out in 2029. This is going to be rolled out next month. And there's a subsection here in this article, what can Americans expect with the new travel entry exit system? That's interesting. You got to have this to get in, and you got to have this to get out if you're traveling to Europe. It says, why should you care? Starting October the 12th, European countries will use a new automated entry-exit system. It's called the EES. And Americans can expect to have their fingerprints and facial images scanned and gathered, and watch this, stored digitally at European borders. Isn't that what Larry Ellison was talking about? Everything needs to be centralized, all of this information and data on every man, woman, and child. The article says right now the fingerprints of children under 12 years of age are not scanned, even if they are subject to the EES. Under the new requirements, American tourists must provide information from their passports, including their name and date of birth. The new system will also collect, isn't that a nice word? Data collection, data mining. Will also collect when and where terrorists are entering and leaving the area. It says this, the European Union explained on its website that the new system is being introduced over a 6-month period and will eventually supplant passport stamps. I mean, I've done my share of traveling. You have to have your passport stamped as you enter. I believe exit as well. Well, forget the stamps. Forget the paper, cardboard, plastic passports. Everything is going to become digitized. The article says the European Union noted that visitors who refuse to provide their biometric data through the entry-exit system will be denied the territory of the European countries. Hey, you don't want to play ball, then you're excluded. Doesn't that sound like Revelation 13, verses 16 through 18? Doesn't that sound like what Starmer was saying? You can't work, can't hold down a job, can't enter, can't exit, no opt-out options. The article says this, which countries in Europe are participating in the new entry-exit system? I think we have a screenshot of this. It says by the numbers, 29 European countries will use a new automated entry-exit system, and they are listed below. Look at all of those European nations: Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, the Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Iceland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Slovakia, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland. Sorry if I read too fast and left out a particular European, tiny European state. But you guys get the idea. Europe is through what's known as the European Common Market, European Economic Community, whatever you want to call it. Europe indeed is being centralized, and it's being digitized, along with what Starmer is saying in the UK, play ball or you can't work. What this system is saying is play ball or you can't travel. If you're coming in, you can't come in. If you came in and want to get out, apparently there's going to be obstructions and hindrances related to that as well. It's interesting to me prophetically how all this kind of stuff is originating in Europe. Notice this picture, if you will, of the Daniel chapter 2 statue. And when you look at that Daniel chapter 2 statue, it's what Nebuchadnezzar saw in a vision as recorded in Daniel 2. Daniel was, when he asked God for an answer, was shown this vision and its interpretation. But it basically represents the various Gentile powers that are going to trample down the nation of Israel during the time period called the times of the Gentiles. It started with Babylon and then moved to Medo-Persia and then to Greece and then to Rome. Rome is the two legs of iron that you see in the statue. Now the feet, if you rightfully divide God's word and interpret it properly, the feet represent the future empire of the Antichrist. The 2 feet, 10 toes mixed with iron and clay, and that's the empire that's being built now. The world is being prepared for that empire, and then the stone cut without human hands is God's kingdom, which will come at the end of the 7-year tribulation period through the second advent of Christ and shatter the feet, the Antichrist's empire, causing the whole statue to crumble. And as all of its pieces are laying there on the threshing room floor, Daniel sees a wind driving the pieces away, and then the stone that is cut without human hands that destroyed the Antichrist empire, and really the whole statue grows till it fills the earth. And so we believe the feet are yet future and the legs are past. And as we like to point out, the feet are connected to the legs. So if the legs of iron represent ancient Rome, then the feet, yet future, connected to the legs, represents the future Antichrist's empire arising out of the cultural inheritance of ancient Rome. And part of the cultural inheritance of ancient Rome is Europe. So as we see all of these technological advances tightening things down through a digitized surveillance society in Europe, we say prophecy is right on schedule. I mean, it stands to reason that it would originate in Europe first, because that's where the center of totalitarianism will arise according to Bible prophecy. And then according to Daniel 7, verse 23, will grow until it fills the entire earth. But we now are sitting on all of this technology, which is capable of subduing, controlling, monitoring, micromanaging the entire population. And if you don't want to submit to it, then you're cut out of this system. Speaking of which, let me show you another piece of technology. This one's very interesting. I call this a double whammy in prophecy, because part of prophecy, I believe, Revelation 9 and Revelation 16, the 6th trumpet judgment and 6th bowl judgment, the manifestation of the kings of the East, I think one of those players is China, coming into northern Israel in the last days to participate in the final battle called the Battle of Armageddon. And in the process, they exterminate a third of the world's population. And so we know China is destined to play some kind of monumental role in the end time scenario. And we know that technology is destined to play a major role in the end time scenario. And so that's why I found this particular article here from The Blaze very interesting, because it weaves together both prophetic themes, technology and China, capable of creating havoc right here in the United States of America. And what's so interesting about Bible prophecy is the United States of America, as we know it, doesn't seem to be mentioned. So what happened to the United States of America before the end time scenario is fulfilled? Well, there's all kinds of theories on it. But one theory is that the United States of America is decimated from within. And here's one potential path through which that might happen. This article is from The Blaze. It's dated October the 3rd, 2025, and it says exclusive. China behind massive nationwide SIM farm network that directly threatens American critical infrastructure. The article says millions of SIM cards carry out surveillance, target leaders for harm, and should be considered acts of war. The discovery of SIM farms that threaten cellular networks in New York City is only the tip of a massive nationwide network run by the Chinese Communist government that poses an immediate threat to the critical American infrastructure and has led to terrorist acts, including hoax SWAT raids at the homes of national leaders, Blaze News has learned. If someone does a hoax SWAT raid on your house, that could end your life because the SWAT team coming thinks that you're a criminal. And if you do anything that's out of the ordinary, I guess, that makes them feel like you're some kind of threat, then you could be shot dead. So that's why this technology allowing people to, as a hoax, summon SWAT to your house, that's physically dangerous. The article says sources in the Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. intelligence community said that SIM card networks were operating in the United States as early as 2004. They have proliferated exponentially since President Donald Trump was reelected to the presidency in November of 2024. The SIM networks were put in place and are managed by China's Ministry of State Security and ultra secretive, massive espionage agency that has grown in prominence and global activity in recent years, according to the journal China Leadership Monitor. Notice global activity. Technology causing potential destruction to the infrastructure of different nations of the world on a global scale. The article says the MSS employs more than 800,000 people, nearly double the Soviet KGB at its peak. Recently, these SIM cards are believed to be responsible for dozens of hoax SWAT raids, including a senior U.S. official, FBI Director Kash Patel, members of Congress, including Marjorie Taylor Greene, and media influencers such as Tim Pool and Stephen K. Bannon. So kind of an interesting article that weaves together a lot of prophetic themes. Number one, the role of China in last days prophecy. Number two, a potential explanation as to why America is not found in the pages of Bible prophecy. And number three, this is all being done through technology. It's hard to talk about the end time scenario without mentioning technology. Now, here's an interesting article here related to bills being promoted that technologically allow utilities companies to monitor things and actually control things that are taking place in your house. Heaters, thermostats, temperatures, things that are considered, private things, personal things. Well, I think as things are moving in a particular direction, we're going to start losing more and more control over those things. They're going to be micro-managed by someone outside of the home. And this article is talking about that very issue. This particular article is dated September the 13th, 2025. The title of it is Ohio Lawmaker Wants to Allow Utilities to Adjust Homeowners' Thermostats, Water Heaters, etc. The article says Ohio lawmakers are considering a new energy initiative that would allow utilities to temporarily adjust residents' thermostats and water heaters. By the way, have you noticed how they're at war with the gas stove, I think it's called? They don't want you dealing with or trafficking in alternative sources of energy, because as long as you're dealing with alternative sources of energy, you're sort of independent. But the moment they control all the devices and energy output in your house is the moment you're under their thumb. We need to save the planet. So we need to, alter your heat cycle or whatever it is, thermostat in your house. I mean, you can imagine all of the excuses that would be used to micromanage people on a day-to-day basis using the necessities of life. That's exactly what Revelation 13 verses 16 through 18 is predicting. And I think we're moving into a time period where that kind of thing is becoming normalized and becoming extremely credible. It says Ohio lawmakers are considering an energy initiative that will allow utilities to temporarily adjust thermostats and water heaters. Now watch this, but only for customers who voluntarily sign up. Once you voluntarily sign up, that's like the proverbial nose under the tent, elephant's nose, camel's nose, there we go, under the tent. And what starts off voluntarily eventually becomes involuntary, particularly when they've got you hooked. House Bill 427, introduced this week in the General Assembly, proposes an opt-in demand response program designed to ease pressure on the state's electrical grid during times of peak demand, such as extreme heat waves in the summer or freezing temperatures in the winter. And that all sounds good on the surface, but can you imagine some of these climate alarmists having an influence over these things? We've got to stop, we've got to protect the planet from man, and so we're going to turn your heat off, or we're going to lower it, or whatever the case may be. This is not the mark of the beast, but it's certainly a psychology, we might put it that way, that's preparing us for the mark of the beast system. It's interesting. We have groomers in the area of sexuality. We talk about sex groomers, grooming the young, preparing them for some kind of future role in prostitution or whatever. What about tech groomers? People that are just making us kind of desensitized to a surveillance state. And we know that at some point, all of this technology is going to fall into the wrong person's hands. And that person will be none other than the Antichrist. Now, speaking of technology, let's go from Revelation 13, verses 16 through 18, and let's back up a couple of verses, or really one verse, and look at Revelation 13, verse 15. It says, "It was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast would even speak, and causes many who do not worship the image of the beast to be killed." So here is John 2,000 years ago on the island of Patmos being given a vision of the end times. And one of the things he sees is this image, which is an inanimate object. And yet, as John is seeing this, he notices that this image has the ability to talk. It looks like it even has breath, even though it's an inanimate object. And it can actually cause people to do things. And if people won't do what the image wants, in this case, worship the Antichrist or the beast, it even has the power to kill somebody. So the power to coerce, the power to force, the power to kill, the power to, looks like, breathe, and even the power to speak. Now, John, being a first century man with first century vocabulary and education and knowledge, would never use the term artificial intelligence because he didn't have that term in his vocabulary. So he keeps using similes, comparisons, sort of explaining, what he thinks this is. Because God, the only thing God did 2,000 years ago on the island of Patmos is he gave to John this vision and he says, write it down. Write down what you see and hear. So John has a pretty big assignment and he sees things 2,000 years or more into the future. He doesn't have a 21st century vocabulary, so he keeps saying like or as. And is it possible that this image that he sees, which we think will be set up in the rebuilt functioning Jewish temple midway through the tribulation period, is this image, could it be describing artificial intelligence? I mean, I think that's a potential or possible interpretation. And so to help us with that, look at this article here from Reuters. Again, a new article, fairly recent, September the 11th, 2025. And here's what the article says. A new minister in Albania has been charged to handle public procurement and will be impervious to bribes, threats, or attempts to curry favor. That is because, let's see if I'm going to pronounce this right, Dahlia, as she is called, is an artificial intelligence-generated bot. That's why she's free of bribes and corruption, because she's an inanimate object. Prime Minister Rama, who is about to begin his fourth term, said on Thursday that Dahlia, which means sun in Albanian, sun, S-U-N, will manage and award all public tenders in which government contracts, contracts private companies for various projects. Dahlia is the first cabinet member who isn't physically present but is virtually created by artificial intelligence, Rama said during a speech unveiling his new cabinet. She will help make Albania a country where public tenders are 100% free of corruption. Dressed in traditional Albanian attire, she provides assistance through voice commands and issues documents with electronic stamps, reducing bureaucratic delays. Not everyone is convinced, the article says. I think we have a short clip of Dahlia in action, so let's go ahead and roll that at this time.
Unë nuk jam këtu për t'i zëvendësuar njerëzit, por për t'i ndihmuar ata.
Not of chromosomes, of flesh, or blood. The latest addition to the Parliament of Albania is not a human but an AI bot. In his recent move, Prime Minister Edi Rama has introduced Djela, literally meaning the sun in Albanian, as the first ever AI minister of the world. Djela made her first appearance on the parliament screen in a traditional Albanian woman's outfit. The vision behind appointing Djela is to deal with the severe issue of corruption in the country.
So suddenly, talking statues, inanimate objects that look like they're alive, it's not really that far-fetched anymore. I used to think it was going to be through occultic powers that statue would talk, and maybe that'll end up being the case. I don't know. It's just the technological climate that we're in today makes this whole scenario that the Bible lays out for us concerning the end times extremely believable, extremely credible, which means humanity is drifting very rapidly into, very close to, the 7-year tribulation period. And we're getting to a point where these machines that we're creating to serve us actually have the potential of enslaving us. Notice this particular article here from, let's see, I think that's Uni. Well, I'm certainly pronouncing that. There we go. Unilad Tech, uniladtech.com. This is dated October the 3rd, 2025, and this deals with one of the godfathers, the progenitors of AI, artificial intelligence. It says, Godfather of AI issues a stark warning that total human extinction is a very real possibility. The future of AI could be darker than you might think. And what he's talking about is the capacity of these machines that we're creating to enslave those that created it in the first place, humanity. Here's a little bit from this article. And by the way, in prior Pastor's Point of View shows, we've had similar quotes like this from the founders of AI who say, let's shut the whole thing down while we have time. And here's another kind of similar sentiment being expressed. The article says, one man many have called the godfather of AI has issued a stark warning and a frightening warning about the future of artificial intelligence, as he fears that it could potentially lead to the end of humanity as we know it. There are already a number of issues that the rapid development of generative artificial intelligence technology has caused, between the eradication of countless jobs, ethical concerns surrounding the behavior of certain models. Interrupting myself here just for a minute in this quote. Did you know that an electronic model, can have a behavior of its own? It sounds like it's almost taking on human qualities. And the immediate environmental impact of growing demand. While many of these issues will only continue to expand over time, they are very much something that millions of people across the globe are already having to face as the technology becomes integrated into daily life. Yet it appears as if things can still get far, far worse. Revealing his fears in a conversation with the Wall Street Journal, Bengio is his last name, hoping I'm pronouncing that right, indicated that he believes that the future of humanity to be at risk, especially when the technology achieves what is widely known to artificial intelligence, artificial general intelligence, which is the point when AI matches and exceeds the capabilities of humans. So you can go so far in the evolution of AI that it can match or potentially exceed the capability of a human being. I mean, if it can match and exceed the capability of a human being, that means it has the capacity to enslave human beings. It has the capacity to coerce human beings. It has the capacity to force worship out of human beings. Isn't that what Revelation 13, verse 15 was predicting? The article goes on and it says, if we build machines that are very smarter than us and have their own preservation goals, then it's dangerous. He explained in the interview, adding that, quote, it's like creating a competitor to humanity that's smarter than us. It's similar to fears outlined in a scarily realistic timeline from a group of scientists where AI almost immediately learns to lie and deceive humans once it gains the intelligence to do so, instead of favoring progress towards its own goals. Again, this to me sounds an awful lot like inanimate objects with human capacities and the power to enslave its own creators. And I'm seeing this in light of Revelation 13, verse 15. Revelation 13, verse 15 doesn't seem bizarre and strange to me anymore. Neither does Revelation 13, verses 16 through 18, because we're sitting on all of this technology where those prophecies can and will be fulfilled. With that being said, let's go to our final bullet point that we want to talk about today in this prophecy update, and this has to do with Babylon. Notice, if you will, Revelation chapter 17 and verse 18. It says, the woman which you saw, the woman whom you saw is the great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. Now that word city, it's hard to emphasize how important that is. It's almost a verse that people in there, and look at this in Revelation commentaries, they either don't comment on it or they skip right over it. And the reason they do that is they're kind of locked into this idea of a last days religious system, a one world religious system, which I agree is coming and is being built. But that doesn't negate from the fact that it emanates from an actual city. It's like Roman Catholicism. Is that a system or a city? The answer is yes, it's both. It's a system coming out of a particular city, Vatican City. It's like using the words Madison Avenue, which is a system coming from a real street, I should say, Madison Avenue. It's like saying K Street, marketing system coming from a real place. There really is a K Street, just like there really is a Madison Avenue. It's like using the word Hollywood. Hollywood is a system of entertainment, but there's an actual location on planet Earth called Hollywood that worldwide system grows out of. And that's what is coming in the last days. There is a one world religion that's coming, but it will come from a particular city on planet Earth. And that city has a name. The name is found, I believe, about 5 times in the book of Revelation. It's the city of Babylon. The title on the harlot's forehead is Babylon the Great, Revelation 17, verse 5. And what we learn at the end of the chapter is the woman, or the harlot, is actually not just a religious system, but a city known as the city of Babylon. Now, the word Babylon is used about 300 times in the Bible, and it always means Babylon. It's a technical term referring to the literal city on the banks of the Euphrates River in modern-day Iraq. Notice what Bullinger says in his commentary as he comments on this verse. I like to use this quote because Bullinger is one of the few commentators that gets it right on this issue. He says here, quote, "It is indeed surprising how any mistake could have been made in the identification of this woman. For the Holy Spirit shows us her very name upon her forehead." Then in verse 18, he tells us as plainly as words can tell anything that the woman which thou sawest is the great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. And then in chapter 16, verse 19, as well as 17, verse 5, it identifies this city with Babylon. God says it's a city. He does not say a system or a religion, but a city. I like to quote Bullinger because he's very good on this Babylon issue. Now, does that mean that I believe everything that Bullinger has ever written? No. He was a brilliant scholar in a lot of ways, but he was what we would call a hyper dispensationalist, an ultra dispensationalist. He didn't believe the church started until Acts 28. And so that's part of his theology that I don't endorse, but I do endorse his statement here. It's very similar to some comments I made about the D'Souza movie, The Dragon's Prophecy, last week. I told people to go out and watch it. I realized Jonathan Cahn is in the movie, and I'm not endorsing everything that Jonathan Cahn has ever said or written, but I thought that his role in the movie was outstanding, and so my endorsement is limited to that. And so I think at some point we need to develop a little bit more maturity. Just because you endorse someone for something doesn't mean you agree with everything they ever said or did. You know, Netanyahu is featured in that movie as well. And I like the things Netanyahu said in that movie. Doesn't mean everything that comes out of Netanyahu's mouth I agree with. He has a theology. which would be quite different than mine. But what he said in that movie was outstanding. And that's what I'm doing here with Bollinger's quotes and any other thing that I happen to quote from. And so I think that should be kind of without needing to be stated, but we're living in this age where people, for whatever reason, I'm not sure why they do it. They want to nitpick you and they want to make you sound like you're giving a blanket endorsement to something and you're not. So that's a little excursus, and it just came to my mind because I'm quoting Bollinger, and I think Bollinger is really good on the subject of future Babylon. So what is future Babylon? Here is a map. It is the city in between the Euphrates and the Tigris in modern day Iraq. And if you have issues with that and you don't believe Babylon means Babylon, a literal city that will play a role in the end times, one guy is out there saying it really means Saudi Arabia, kind of close, but no cigar. A lot of interpreters, going back to Martin Luther, said this is really Vatican City, not Babylon in the east, but Rome in the west. Very sadly, people are trying to connect this with the Statue of Liberty and trying to argue that this is New York City. If you're into that kind of fuzzy allegorical interpretation and you don't think there's any real arguments for literal Babylon being literal Babylon in Iraq, I did write a book on the subject. It's called Babylon, the Bookends of Prophetic History, and it'll answer all of those allegorical arguments. A lot of people will come onto my YouTube channel, social media, etc., send me emails on this when it's obvious to me that they haven't read the book, because in the book I answer all of the arguments that they bring up. What about Mystery Babylon? What about 1 Peter 5, verse 13, where Peter says, "She who is from Babylon greets you"? What about the seven hills of Rome, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? All those arguments, and they're kind of recycled as time progresses. They sort of start coming back to life, arguments that have been put to rest a long time ago. But I try to answer those in that book, and I believe that Babylon means Babylon. Babylon is destined to play a role in the end times. And people say, well, that's just too literal. Well, you know what, folks? They said that at one point about Israel and Jerusalem, because the nation of Israel was not reborn, the modern state of Israel, as we call it, until 1948. And Jerusalem didn't fall back into Jewish hands until 1967. And prior to that point in time, when Mark Twain visited that part of the world, 1867, wrote about it 2 years later in his book, Innocents Abroad, 1869, he says there's nothing here but a barren expanse. It's just a desert. And for 2,000 years, that has been the condition of Israel and the city of Jerusalem. But Bible prophecy indicated that the city would come back to life and be the hub of Jewry, the Hebrews, regathered from the four corners of the earth, being brought back to that part of the world. And such a prophecy seemed ridiculous for roughly 2,000 years. But suddenly in 1948, 1967, etc., history finally caught up to the scenario that the Bible anticipates for the end of the age. And now everybody looks at those prophecies as if they were literal. The same thing is about to happen and is happening with the literal city of Babylon. Babylon is being brought back to life and is becoming the center of economic power in Iraq, eventually the region, and eventually the entire world. And here are a couple of news articles that we've dealt with on prior shows. I think it was our last show that we brought this to your attention. Here's one from Iraq Business News. It says Iraq declares Babylon as the industrial capital, think about that, industrial capital, opens new factories. And I would just say, hello, Revelation 17 and 18. And here's another article that we covered last time. This one coming from AGBI, which stands for the Arabian Gulf Business Insight. And it says China's ZPEC, a company in China, opens Iraq oil subsidiary. And guess what they're naming it? They're naming it Babylon. Now, let's go to an article. We'll be very brief here that we haven't covered yet. This particular one comes from Iraqi News. This is dated September the 22nd, 2025. It says Iraq launches first plastic granules factory project where? In Babylon. Notice how specific these articles are. Not Mesopotamia, not Babylonia in general, not Shinar in general, not Iraq in general, but in the actual literal city of Babylon. I believe it's 58 miles south of Baghdad. Here's what the article says. Iraq's Prime Minister al-Sudani has inaugurated executive work on a plastic granules factory in Babylon Governorate, a project described the first of its kind in Iraq. Here's how the article concludes. The facility will help reduce Iraq's dependence on imported materials, strengthen its industrial base, and contribute to the government's broader strategy of diversifying the economy and encouraging private sector participation. The project is also expected to create jobs in the Babel province and beyond, marking a milestone in Iraq's industrial development. Now, if God means what he says and says what he means, and he does, I would expect these type of articles to accelerate as we get closer to the end of the age. Look for a resurfacing and a resurgence of Babylon to play a role in the end times scenario. So what we covered today in this brief prophecy update is a couple of issues: technology, Mark of the Beast technology, whether it's Revelation 13, 16 through 18, or whether we're talking about a coercing, talking, breathing statue. Technology is caught up to the scenario that the Bible is indicating will elapse on planet Earth before Jesus returns. And then there's been a few recent developments concerning the literal city of Babylon. We always like to end our broadcast with a note of hope. Titus 2, verse 13 says, looking for the blessed hope and the appearing and the glory of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. There's a great promise in the Bible that before God's wrath hits planet Earth, Jesus promises to return and to take us to the Father's house. Before the wrath of God hits this planet, we are not appointed unto wrath. What a great promise that is, in addition to countless other promises. And you can be dialed into those promises by placing your personal faith in the finished work of Jesus Christ for your sins individually, for the safekeeping of your soul individually, for your eternal security individually. I mean, did you know that if you were the only person on planet Earth, the Lord still would have died on that cross? Because he loves humanity generically, but he also loves you as an individual and wants a relationship with you. And he's done everything necessary through Christ's death, burial, resurrection, and ascension to bridge that gap between our sinfulness and the holiness of God. And he asks us not to work for our salvation, but simply to trust in the finished work of his Son. And I hope many, many people within the sound of my voice will be receiving that as a free gift by placing their personal faith in the finished work of Jesus Christ. A few infomercials by way of concluding. Find Andy Wood's ministries in your podcast search engine, and enjoy our content in podcast format. Go to the App Store, type in Andy Wood's Ministries into the search engine, download our free app, access all of our content that way. Go to andywoodsministries.org to access our content. And there's also, if we can flip the slide, there's a conspicuous way on the homepage of our website to sign up for our free newsletter, which you'll get basically every Friday. And so all of this content is yours at your fingertips, absolutely free. Want to make you aware of the Ask Andy artificial intelligence device. You might say, Andy, you're really contradicting yourself. I mean, you were condemning artificial intelligence related to the mark of the beast system and technology. Why in the world would your ministry use artificial intelligence? Well, we don't use it so much to create. We use it to retrieve. And I have a vast library now of sermons and writings, and people write to us all over the world with questions. And all you do is go to our app or website and access this Ask Andy artificial intelligence device. You put your question into the question box, hit send, and it thinks for a minute as it's searching all my stuff. And it will bring up for you in a very readable paragraph or two an answer to your question, and it will take you to the exact source in my writings or sermons, the exact point, the exact minute, the exact second where you can listen to or watch the sermon to see how it retrieved its various answers, and it will actually give you follow-up questions. So it's a tremendous tool available at your fingertips. The guys that put this together for me tell me that the Ask Andy artificial intelligence device is answering about 1,200 questions per day. So this is an impact that it's having, which is far bigger than what we originally anticipated. I think on last week's show, I said 1,200 questions per week. That's not accurate. It's actually per day. And since it's been unleashed, it's answered over about at least more than 30,000 questions. So praise the Lord for that. If you're interested in seminary training, go to the school. Our online school that I'm the president of, Schaefer Theological Seminary. There's the website address. While you're there, access our journal called Pneumaticos, and we have coming up a Sugarland Town Square event. It's going to be November 22nd from 6:30 to 9 p.m., featuring Olam Worship. Sharam Hadian is a speaker. Dr. Robert Dean of nearby West Houston Bible Church is a speaker. Sugarland Councilman Rick Miller as a speaker. And it's all about unfailing love, a night to encounter God's heart. And it's going to be a great public 3-hour event. Music, prayer, testimonies, free books and tracts, children's biblical recitations, and special guest speakers. Go to slbc.org to learn more about this event coming up November 22nd, 2025. And then in the month of December, we have the pre-trib study group coming up December 8th through 10th in the Dallas area. There's the website you can go to get information on that. Academic Papers, Max Lucado, who's sort of had a conversion, shall we say, into the dispensational eschatological belief system. He's actually written a whole book about it. Unfortunately, kind of like Jonathan Cahn, a lot of people are writing to me, telling me how terrible Max Lucado is. Read his book and tell me where he's wrong eschatologically. Beyond that, with the Jonathan Cahn issue, watch the movie. Tell me what's said in that movie. Don't bring up a bunch of stuff he said elsewhere. What's unbiblical in that movie called The Dragon's Prophecy? I don't think there's anything unbiblical about it. And I don't think there's anything unbiblical about the eschatology of Max Lucado. Beyond that, I'd like to invite you to come out to our SLBC Prof Con, which is our 5th annual prophecy conference put on through Sugarland Bible Church. It's February 20th, all day Friday, all day Saturday. Shabbat meal banquet Friday evening. The focus of this particular prophecy conference is Last Days Discernment, special music by Olam Worship. I'll do an interview with Melissa Hooray of the Lindell Recovery Network. And look at this list of presenters: Paul Wilkinson, Russ Miller, myself, Olivier Melnick, Patrick Wood, Alex Newman. It's going to be an outstanding prophecy conference. Love to have you stick around Friday, Saturday, and then come on over to church on Sunday, where our conference presenters will be speaking at our normal times during our normal worship services at Sugarland Bible Church. This conference has grown in popularity over the years, so we have decided to move it this year, at least the Friday and Saturday aspect of it, to the Marriott City Walk in Sugarland Town Square. And so this, again, will be February 20th to 21st. Go to profcon.com to learn more about it. There's a QR code also where you can learn about it as well. And as 2026 continues to unfold, don't forget about March the 14th, 2026, the Stealing the Mind Conference in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. You'll see myself there. I believe Alex Newman is going to be there. Russ Miller is going to be there, and some others. That's a great one-day event, Saturday, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. There's a conference coming up August 1st, 2026, called the Abraham to Armageddon Conference, and the speakers will include J.B. Hickson, Brandon Holthouse, Tom Hughes, Olivier Melnick, and it's going to be put together by Pastor Brad Reeves. He's the host pastor, and I'm one of the speakers there. That's going to be in historic Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. There's a website at the bottom. I think you can see it. It's called ComingSoonMinistries.com, where you can access information about that prophecy conference coming up August the 1st, 2026. And then there's the Compass Cruise coming up also in 2026, September 24th through October 10th, a great tour and cruise through Bible lands where Paul visited on his various missionary journeys, 5 days in Israel, 5-star ship, 9-day cruise, 3 countries covered. I'll be teaching live at the sites. I'll be teaching on the ship along with my good friend Bill Perkins. And then the last but not least thing I'll remind you of is my book on how to vote biblically is out. There's a QR code related how to access that. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening and watching Pastor's Point of View, and Lord willing, we'll see you next time. God bless you.